It was the kind of neighborhood you'd expect to find in a movie, a peaceful, quiet place where everything was perfectly in place. Nice lawns, friendly faces, and the sound of birds singing in the morning. But there was one thing that made my new home feel wrong. Hello everyone, and welcome to Creepy Chillz. My neighbor. I had just moved into the house next door to him. At first, I thought nothing of it. It was a small town, and the people here are nice, maybe a little too nice, but that wasn't unusual. But there was something strange about Mr. Avery, the man who lived next door. He never spoke to anyone. Not once. He was always watching, but never talking. It all started the day I moved in. I was unloading boxes from my car when I first saw him. He was standing in his front yard, staring at me. No wave, no smile, just staring. He was tall, with gray hair that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. He wore an old button-up shirt, but what really stood out were his eyes, cold, unblinking, and empty. I waved awkwardly, hoping for a greeting, but he didn't move. He didn't even blink. He just stared. Hi there. I called out, trying to sound friendly, but he didn't respond. It wasn't that he was rude, it was just silent. So I shrugged it off. Maybe he was shy, or maybe he didn't want to talk. But still, there was something unsettling about the way he just stood there, watching. Days went by, and I started noticing him more and more. Every time I went outside, there he was, standing in his yard, staring at the street or at me, or sometimes just into the distance. His presence became a part of my routine, like an annoying shadow that wouldn't leave. But it wasn't just that he was silent. It was that he seemed to watch everything. Every movement, every turn. It was as if he knew when I was coming out of the house, even if I hadn't made a sound. One evening, I was on my porch when I saw him again. But this time it was different. He was standing right at the edge of his yard, closer than ever before. His eyes were locked on me, unblinking, never moving. My heart skipped a beat. It felt like he could see right through me, as if he was waiting for something, expecting something. "Hey, Mr. Avery," I said, trying to sound casual. "How's it going?" He didn't answer. His lips didn't move, but his gaze never left me. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine, something that made me want to run inside and lock the door. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling that was crawling up my neck. I went inside after a few minutes, my mind racing. What was wrong with him? Why didn't he talk? Why did he always just stare? The next day I was in my yard, trimming the hedges, when I saw something that made my blood run cold. He was standing in the same spot again, but this time his figure was even closer to my window. I hadn't heard him move. He was just there, silent, still, and watching. My hands froze around the pruning shears. How had he gotten so close? How long had he been there? I quickly turned my head to avoid looking at him, but I could feel his eyes on me. It was as if they were burning into my skin. I finished my task as quickly as I could and hurried inside. I locked the door behind me, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. It felt like he was always there, even when I couldn't see him. As the days passed, I started to notice more strange things. It wasn't just that he was always watching. It was that he seemed to know when something was about to happen. Whenever I went out, he was there. Whenever I came home, he was standing in his yard, staring at me. One evening, after a long day at work, I returned home to find my porch light flickering. I thought maybe the bulb was going out, but as I went to check it, I saw Mr. Avery again. He was standing on the edge of his yard, his eyes locked on me. It was the same as always, silent, still, but this time there was something different. A sense of urgency, like he was waiting for something or someone. I shook it off and went to the light, pretending to fiddle with the bulb. But when I glanced back, I realized something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't standing at the edge of the yard anymore. No, he was closer, just a few feet away from me. How had he moved without me hearing anything? Before I could react, I rushed inside and locked the door behind me. My heart was pounding so loudly I could hear in my ears. I didn't dare look outside again. I didn't want to know if he was still there. The next morning, I tried to go about my day as usual, but something felt off. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me, that he was always there, lurking in the background, waiting for something. That afternoon, I overheard two neighbors talking about him. "I haven't seen Mr. Avery in days," one said. "You think he's okay?" The other one lowered her voice and replied, "He's always been like that, quiet. But lately, It's like he doesn't even leave his house. Not unless he's watching someone. The conversation made my skin crawl. I had been right. He never left. He just watched. All the time. That night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of the wind against the windows and the creaks of the house only made things worse. But what really kept me up was the soft tap, tap, tap against the glass. It was faint at first, almost like a breeze, but then it grew louder. I turned slowly, my breath caught in my throat. And there he was, Mr. Avery, his face pressed against my window, his eyes wide and unblinking. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stared. And in that moment, I knew something was terribly wrong. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I was frozen, unable to tear my eyes away from his. And then, just as quickly as he had appeared, he was gone. The next morning, I found an envelope on my doorstep. It was plain, with no name or return address. Inside, there was a single piece of paper. It was handwritten, the letters sharp and uneven. I never meant to be your neighbor. I don't know what that meant. I don't know who Mr. Avery really was. But after that night, he was gone. The house was empty, like he had never been there. But sometimes when I stand in my yard, I can still feel those cold eyes on me, watching from the shadows. And I wonder, is he still out there? Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment.